What's up, Giants fans, Hub watchers, YouTube subscribers, Twitter and Instagram followers? It's Kush back at it again with another New York Giants video. What up, Rumble subscribers as well? Of course, if you aren't subscribed to me on Rumble, go check me out over there. Just another site you guys get my content from. But as the video title probably suggests, we are here once again for the, I think it's 136th time to talk about head coach Joe Judge. Talk about Joe Judge, the job that he's done with the Giants over this past 2 years, in fact, whether or not he should be back and whatnot. And it's honestly a topic that's been beaten to that. But I think in my videos, actually, surprisingly, I think I've only ever directly addressed it in one video, and it was somewhere in the midway point of the season, or after the midway point of the season, I believe, where I think the video title was "Should They Stay or Should They Go?" where I talked about, reasons to keep Joe Judge, reasons to not keep Joe Judge. And this is going to be very, very similar to that. In fact, I might even use the same format of edits and things like that nature and whatnot. But it's sad that we're sitting here in the final week of the season, the very first week 18 in NFL history. We have the Washington football team coming up to, go and battle them at MetLife Stadium here, which once again, I will be at that game. So if any of you guys are going to be there, drop a comment down below. Hopefully we can meet up, have a good time at a tailgate and whatnot. But it's sad that at the end of the season, I'm asking the same question that I asked all those weeks ago in that video, because we should really have an answer. And even though a lot of people think that they have an answer, whether that's yes, we should keep Joe Judge, or no, fire Joe Judge, let's get somebody else in here. The fact of the matter is, I don't know if we've seen enough to say either or. And I believe I said that in that old video as well. But let's start with first, there's things that are in Joe Judge's favor. And I need to give a shout out to Sober Party. He's a subscriber and also friend offline of YouTube of mine as well. We were talking last night while I was debating going live or not. Obviously, I didn't end up going live for personal reasons. But we were talking about Joe Judge on Twitter. And that's really what gave me the idea to go out and make this video, because Sober Party was bringing up good points. And there's some things where I just had to concede. So let's start off with, of course, the injuries, which nobody wants to hear. But how can you win if your best players are missing? How can you win if your best players are constantly in and out? How can you win, how can you produce a winning team with the amount of injuries that the Giants had and the lack of depth that the Giants had? And before I even get into that, this really comes down to, well, how much are we putting on Joe Judge's title? When I say that, I mean, if I say that we had a lack of depth, some people will put that on Joe Judge. They will say, well, it's his job as the head coach to make sure that we have good talent in the backups, in that depth chart right there, so that in the occasion, in the situation that our starters go down, which they did, we have serviceable backups. Other people will put that on the general manager. And then there's some people that put them on both of them. I'm here to just say it's more than likely the general manager or both of them, but I don't think it would ever be fully the head coach. Either way, he was missing starting guys. I remember at one point during the season, I did a count, and it was like 15 players were injured. That was very early on too. I feel like that was week 3 or something. And it's just like, when you have that many players go out, especially early on in the season, you talk about our offensive line, which is trash, but we didn't even get a chance to see our starters play fully healthy for more than one game, right? We had that one game against Denver, which wasn't good. Let's call spade a spade. That game against Denver, which was probably our healthiest of the season, we were not good at all. That was also very early on with Devontae Booker, before Booker kind of hit his stride and was a guy that was to legitimately get us 4 or 5 yards carry. The offensive line did kind of look bad. They did a good job in pass protection, but as was, the bane of our existence with the offensive line this season, it's been more so in the run blocking than pass protection. That's been a major problem. But we went out very early. We missed Shane Lemieux. We missed Nick Gates. Will Hernandez is trash. Our right tackle situation is abysmal. And then we missed the backups behind them. Ben Bredesen went out. The guy that we have starting at center right now, Billy Price, we traded for right before the season began. And yeah, of course, the struggles continue with Hernandez, but you have really just like the worst mosh posh of a offensive line ever. And with that, your success is definitely going to be limited, right? So injuries do play a factor here. And whether or not you want to give Judge, not necessarily credit, but you want to say, all right, he has that going for him, once again, depends on what I brought up earlier, which is, do you blame roster, putting together a roster on him, or do you blame it on Gettleman? Or do you blame it on both of them? Whatever the case is, I don't think most of the blame should go on him for that, for, the lack of an offensive line. It was Dave Gettleman, after all, that told us in that press conference that he believed in that offensive line. Joe Judge always hinted at it. He always hinted at it. The coaching staff always said, we're seeing things that you guys are not seeing. They did always say that. But the guy that believed in it from very early on, from that, that famous Kim Jones question, was Dave Gettleman. And if it's a case where, yes, Gettleman is the one that's bringing in the talent, which, I mean, would make sense because he's the GM, then what would Judge be able to do as just a second-year head coach to say, hey, get me more guys, right? I'm not trying to defend him because you guys know me. I'm on the fence with him. I'm kind of leaning towards him being gone. But these factors need to be taken into consideration, especially when you consider that because you're missing those guys on the line and because your other guys are in and out. And now we're talking about the medical staff here with recent information from Scott Simonson. If you guys go and watch my most recent stream on Monday night, where I went through a whole Twitter thread, the most striking fact that Scott Simonson brought about during that entire thread was a specific doctor in Dr. Rodeo, not necessarily misdiagnosing, but kind of being lackadaisical in the way that he was diagnosing and taking care of players on the Giants, at least in Scott Simonson's time there. And throughout this entire season, I've been kind of banging on the barrel, so to speak, on the drum at people that we need to take notice that this medical staff is not a good one. They may be long tenured, they may be well respected in the NFL, but the results speak for themselves. Our players get injured more often than anybody else in the league, and yes, turf does play a role in that. But what is completely on the medical staff, in my opinion, is telling them how much time they need to take off and telling them how much time they need to spend in recovery. I feel like our players don't recover well at all, and that's why they get re-injured. I feel that's why they're in and out all the time. Kenny Golladay came back in that same game, went out with an abdominal injury. Kadarius Toney came back and was out again. We haven't seen him since. In my mind, he still only played like 3 games as a Giant. And so when you have players in and out like that, now it's like, do you put it on Joe Judge, right? Like, is Joe Judge have power over the medical staff? Can he fire them? I don't know. Somebody, I'm actually asking that seriously. If one of y'all can answer, put it down below. I'm gonna guess probably not, right? I'm gonna guess probably not. You talk about development of players. It's a point that I brought up before, and it's kind of been disproven, or at least there's been good examples that go against it, right? I've always said I feel like the Giants can't develop players that they draft in the mid to late rounds, and part of me still feels that. There are like a couple exceptions to the rule, right? Tay Crowder, best Mr. Irrelevant pick ever. He doesn't play like a Mr. Irrelevant pick. He plays like, in my opinion, like a 3rd or 4th rounder, right? Which is good, really good considering where we got him. Nick Gates was an undrafted free agent that was our starting center, and I have faith in him to be a great starting guard if he ever comes back to play in the NFL, because that injury was so serious. There's another person that developed really well that's slipping my mind. But even then, right, like I'm saying, we have exceptions to the rule, but I feel like the rule still stands, where it's like we don't develop our players well. And I do think that's on the coaching staff. I really do think that's on the coaching staff. And as you can see, I'm sort of shifting into the reasons why Judge should be gone. And now we're all over to stuff like preparation, where it's like, I'm sorry, but no matter what you tell me, from week 12 onwards, I don't think this team has been prepared to play football. We're not exaggerating when we say they look like a high school football team out there, because we're not the only people that see it. You go online, you go to Twitter, you go to social media, wherever there's football talk, football forums, other teams, they see how bad we are. Reporters that cover other teams, they literally have said Washington Giants have been watching the worst football all year in these past couple of weeks, and they're right. We're not prepared, Joe Judge. That's on you. That's your job. We're not disciplined, all right? People have tried to use this as an argument against me, saying that, oh, look at the discipline we got. I'm like, we were disciplined last year. We lost all of that this year. I'm sorry. Are we forgetting the amount of penalties the Giants have gotten throughout the season? And it has eased up a little bit in the second half, but that first half was atrocious. We lost games because of those penalties, if you guys remember correctly. And then that Farrell Cooper, that's discipline as well. You guys know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, of course, on that, I can't remember if it was a punt return or a kickoff. Might have been either or. It doesn't really matter. Where he just let the ball sail over his head because he wasn't paying attention properly. Thought it was going to go in the end zone. We ended up being on like the 1 or 2 yard line, safety. That's discipline. Pay attention. Do your job, for crying out loud. And there's still times where we can't make tackles. All right, that's a problem all the way back from 2019. It's there in spurts. It's there in spurts. There's still times where we can't make tackles, and I really wonder what are these guys doing in practice. Like, for real. Mike Glennon. This kind of going back to the earlier thing with talent, right? Talent being an issue. And to be fair, in my opinion, this Giants team is more talented than people give it credit for. I do think that if we could somehow fix the offensive line this offseason, which is possible in theory, right? Like, that just means you attack the offensive line heavily in the draft. And I feel like if you get 3 out of those 5, I've said this a while now, you get 3 out of those 5 positions on the line, the 2 tackles in the center, you're going to have a good line. We have a chance to get the other tackle and center, in my opinion, this draft. If we could fix that line, if we could get an edge rusher to help solidify the defense, because I feel like the defense is right there, right? Keep Martinez, keep Bradbury for the other year that they're here. A lot of people want them gone. I'm just like, what are you going to do with that extra money? Like, I don't see anything good coming from that extra money. So keep them, get an edge, get the line. And honestly, the most difficult part is going to be finding a talented, wise, smart, young, hotshot offensive coordinator, because I don't know why they'd want to come to the Giants in the first place. But those are 3 things that if we could do, I feel like we're immediately back on the right track. I feel like we could be fighting in the NFC East. I'm not going to say nothing about playoffs yet, but with those, we could be fighting in the NFC East. And maybe I got my blue lens on. I'm thinking too far ahead. I'm being too optimistic. But this team is talented. The injuries have done a lot to it. And in fact, let me shift my my statement a little bit. We're talented as a starting team, right? The defense, not the defense, the depth, like I was saying earlier, is still really bad. And that's what we've been seeing for most of the season, depth. And that's something, going back to like I was saying with Judge, and this relates to Mike Glennon as well, because the depth at quarterback has been like the worst that I've seen in my entire life. Just like the depth at linebacker a few years ago was the worst we've seen. It's been serviceable this year, but the depth at quarterback has been trash. The depth at offensive line has been trash. And it's like, do you put that on Judge? Do you put that on Gelman? One thing you could for sure put on Judge is the fact that he continuously started Mike Glennon, man. At some point at the head coach, you have to say, I put my foot down. I'm not putting this man out there to go out and throw more turnovers than completed passes and be like, yo, Gettleman, there's got to be somebody on the waiver wire that we could sign that's better than this man. We have to trade this man for a bag of chips. He's just detrimental to the team. Addition by subtraction, removing him from the team will be a plus. But that never really happened now, did it? And we saw Mike Glennon come out and make the same mistakes over and over and over again. When you're making the same mistakes over and over and over again, that's coaching, right? And I understand this video wasn't exactly the best. Hell, I might not even put in the edit I was talking about where it's like sliding in and there's a graphic that says reason to keep Judge. That slides out. Then another slide in, a graphic that says reasons to get rid of Judge, because it's been so jumbled. And I feel like there's still a way you guys can understand me here. But I'll say what I want. I do want to get rid of Judge. I do, honestly. However, part of me really feels like if he could get the team back healthy, and we are hearing a lot of people saying that players do actually like this man. Players do actually like him as a head coach. They do listen to him as a head coach. And that stands for something. I'm going to go with what Ryan Clark said, where it's like we don't have any quantifiable evidence to keep Joe Judge. All we have is promises. But players liking a coach does stand for something. And if they can get healthy, if they can improve on the line, I would give him one more year, because it's still his roster, right? We don't want to bring in another coach, in my opinion, and have them saddled with what Joe Judge was saddled when he first came in here, and that was Pat Shurmur's roster. So we don't want to bring in a head coach and have them saddled with Joe Judge's roster. To be quite honest with y'all, I wouldn't really extend anybody necessarily. I do a couple like small re-signings, but I don't want anybody on here for more than past like 2025 or something like that. So that way, if we do inevitably replace Judge, The contracts will be easy to get rid of, and those players will be replaceable for the next coach, right? And also, this heavily depends on the GM situation as well, right? Like, man, I would love for the new GM to decide if he wants to keep Judge or not. But there are some things here where I'm just like, maybe he can do something with this roster. We did see something in his first year. And I don't think, unless we saw the worst decline in NFL history of coaching, that's something, that little bit of something we saw in year one just disappeared out of nowhere. I don't know. Like I said, this was more of a ramble than anything. But you guys put your thoughts and comments down below. I want to hear what you all are saying. Like, share, subscribe, and I'm out. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. I'll catch y'all in the next one.